Aloha, this is Skye with FNN-Feminist News Network, feminist news that's right for you. Today, I want to talk about Maya Little, the new black feminist activist in North Carolina that threw out her black girl magic and created a wave that made the Silent Sam topple down and fall on his face. All right, girl. You worked it. You did it. You're on. That's how real black feminists do. They don't have to be loud. They don't have to be shocking. They don't have to be rude. They just do what they do to get it done. Now, this doctoral student, with her doctorate being in Chinese history, has taken the stand against racism for these Confederate statues that are overlooking the campus, and it's the first thing you see as you come in, and it stares straight into a black neighborhood that's being impressed by the police and everything in that area. That's the city we're talking about. That's where that statue is. And we need to bring more of these statues down. Let's take a look at the only interview she gave that was nationalized, because she gave other local interviews. But we're going to celebrate Maya Little by showing a portion of her interview on Democracy Now! Because she said some very profound things. All right.
We end today's show in North Carolina, where hundreds of student protesters in Chapel Hill toppled the Silent Sam Confederate statue at University of North Carolina Monday night on the eve of the first day of classes. The statue was erected in 1913 to honor Confederate soldiers. It's been the target of repeated protests. Video footage shows protesters surrounding the statue with tall banners. Then the statue was toppled. This is UNC, University of North Carolina, doctoral student Maya Little speaking at Monday's protest. She herself faces charges of property destruction and possible expulsion for pouring red ink in her own blood on the statue during an earlier protest in April. But this is Maya Monday night.
A statue that advocates violence against us, that honors slave owners. At this statue, I have felt degraded, and I have also been harassed. I have been surveilled by police. I have been called a nigger. I have been told that I will be hung from the tree right above Silent Sam.
Protesters later tried to bury the toppled statue's head, but officials took it away. Silent Sam, as the statue is called, is just the latest Confederate monument to come down in North Carolina around the United States. In recent months, a Confederate soldiers monument in Durham was toppled last August, 2 days after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where a woman was killed protesting the white supremacists. In December, work crews removed 2 Confederate statues from parks in Memphis, Tennessee. Civil War-era landmarks and Confederate monuments also came down in New Orleans and Baltimore. For more, we're going to Durham, North Carolina, to speak with Maya Little, the activist and doctoral student at the University of North Carolina, who you just heard speaking Monday night. Maya, talk about the significance of the toppling of this statue.
For me, it's very significant. This has been a very long battle with the university. The first time the statue was vandalized or painted was in 1968, the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. 50 years later, the members of our community, students, workers, and people of our community took it upon themselves to do what UNC wouldn't do and remove the statue and memorialize those who have lost their lives to white supremacy.
So talk about what you did in April and what you've been charged with.
In April, I did what I've been doing this past year, which is adding historical context to the white supremacist monument known as Silent Sam. I poured my blood in red ink on the statue because it sits sanitized, and yet it's founded on this idea of violence towards black people. It was dedicated during the dedication speech. Julian Carr talked about whipping a black woman until her skirt was in shreds on university grounds. It was christened by this notion of violence towards Black people, and for it to sit at the university without that context is historically wrong.
Can you talk about the charges you're facing right now?
Right now, I'm facing criminal charges for vandalism. I'll be tried in Orange County, which is very historic in many ways. Orange County is the same place that James Lewis Cates' murderers were tried in 1973. It is also the same place that Bayard Rustin and many of the first freedom riders were tried after being stopped in Chapel Hill. My court date is October 15th at 9 a.m.
And talk about what you did in April.
Again, I threw my blood and red ink on the statue. I was providing the context that I, as a Black person, and the other Black students, workers, and community members who had to walk by that statue and be degraded every day had to see, which is a literal noose hanging on our campus, which is a memorial to violence towards Black people, to the people who enslaved my ancestors and sold their children. By pouring my blood and red ink on the statue, I hope to contextualize it.
Your chancellor, the chancellor of the University of North Carolina, Carol Folt, called the removal of the Silent Sam statue Monday night unlawful and dangerous. But she did acknowledge on Tuesday in an open letter that the statue, quote, has been divisive for years, and its presence has been a source of frustration for many people, not only on our campus, but throughout the community. What is your response to what she has said?
Oh, well, in fact, I think what was actually unlawful and dangerous was the chancellor's decision to not act, to, in fact, only act around Silent Sam, to harass and use university police to spy on student protesters and anti-racist activists. What is actually unlawful and disrespectful is forcing Black students to study on a campus with buildings named after slave owners, to study on a campus in which the forefront was a memorial to the people who enslaved their ancestors, who continued to disenfranchise, murder, and commit violence towards them in the 1920s and during Jim Crow.
I would
say, in fact, that Chancellor Folt's response and the university's response, which was to punish and to target anti-racist activists, was much more unlawful, much more disrespectful than what many community members did, which was courageously remove a statue.
I wanted to go back to that story you told about the white supremacist industrialist Julian Carr speaking at the 1913 unveiling of the Silent Sam statue on the UNC campus. An alumni was also a veteran of the Civil War. He spoke about how just 100 yards from the statue he had in the weeks immediately after the end of the Civil War personally horsewhipped a Black woman, quote, until her skirts hung in shreds because upon the streets of this quiet village she had publicly insulted and maligned a Southern lady and then rushed for protection to these university buildings where was stationed a garrison of 100 federal soldiers. I performed the pleasing duty in the immediate presence of the entire garrison, and for 30 nights afterwards slept with a double-barrel shotgun under my head, he said. So describe your feelings, Maya, on Monday night when the Silent Sam statue was toppled a few months after you had thrown your own blood on the statue.
It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen at UNC. Students, workers, and community members coming together to memorialize, to take our streets back from racist with badges and without badges, and to topple that statue.
And can you describe exactly how it went down Monday night?
I'm not sure, actually.
And what would
we saw it all come down.
Go ahead.
It made like a really mighty sound, fell into the dirt, and we all cheered.
They wanted to bury the head?
I think many people threw dirt on the head. I mean, again, we've been struggling against this statue, against institutional white supremacy at UNC for so long, since Black students have been at this university. And the community around this area has also struggled with white supremacy at UNC. It was a joyous moment for students and for workers and for community members to know that we are able to defend ourselves and to protect our community and to stop racism and white supremacy within it.
Maya Little, what would you like to see the statue replaced by?
I think that UNC has the opportunity to honor the resistance to white supremacy at UNC by erecting statues to people who have fought against this white supremacy, and also those who have been murdered by it. It would be nice to see a memorial to James Lewis Cates, who was murdered in UNC's pit in 1970 by a white supremacist motorcycle gang. It would be lovely to see a memorial to Jesus Huerta, who was murdered by police in Durham. It would be lovely to see a memorial to that unnamed Black woman who rushed to the university campus for safety and was beaten by Julian Carr.
Maybe there'll be a statue for you, Maya Little. What message do you have for President Trump today?
I think the same message that we've had for Chancellor Folt and others. When they do nothing to protect us, when they do nothing to protect Black and brown people in this country, we fight back. We take things into our own hand and we protect ourselves and fight against racism. And that's what we'll continue to do.
What are you majoring in? What is your doctorate in?
I study recent Chinese history.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being with us.
Now, that was a very short interview. I put together the best pieces, which even made it shorter. But she said some profound things, and the type of activist that she is, she's looking out for her community. She knows that these people are disenfranchised. She knows that they're being held down, but she still gives word of encouragement to the other sisters and brothers that are going to come in to meet this same type of racism. That is a woman that's thinking of more than just herself. And by putting her red paint mixed with her blood on that statue, she made a statement about how serious she was about making that statement. For real though. Now, Valerie Johnson, the woman on the North Carolina History Commission that was brought together by the governor to see if they should leave the remaining statues on campus or around the city. They got together and they had a vote, and it was 2-1 and then 1-2. They explained it on my go-to Democracy Now! Basically, Valerie was the dissenting vote, the only Black female on there of 2 that's in the commission's 100-year history. And she explained why she cast that dissenting vote, why it's important to have that, why women and other Black activists and women are looking up to her for the dissenting cast vote that she did. We at FNN want you to hear what Valerie had to say, because it's really important that you know how real Black feminists like this women's study professor in North Carolina, how these type of people talk, feel, and are down with Black feminism and getting rid of degrading history that keeps all Black women down. Let's take a look.
The state's historical commission voted 9-2 to not remove Confederate monuments from the grounds of the state capitol. Instead, the historical commission voted Wednesday to add context to the memorials with signs about, quote, the consequences of slavery and the, quote, subsequent oppressive subjugation of African American people. The decision came in response to Democratic Governor Roy Cooper's request last year to move the monuments to a battlefield.
Well, for more, we go to Durham, North Carolina, where we're joined by one of 2 dissenters in the vote to keep the 3 Confederate monuments in place on the state capitol. She was also the only dissenting vote against adding historical context to the monuments that would remain. That was a 10-1 vote. Valerie Johnson is one of only 2 African-American members of the 17-member North Carolina Historical Commission and the only African-American woman. She's a professor of women's studies and director of of Africana Women's Studies at Greensboro's Bennett College and chair of the North Carolina African American Heritage Commission. Thanks so much for joining us, Professor Johnson. Can you talk about this vote? I mean, 2 days after the students toppled Silent Sam, which is a monument not to one person, but to the Confederate soldiers who were students at UNC. They brought it down, threw dirt on its face. The commission convenes and votes to keep the 3 Confederate monuments on the grounds of the Capitol. Talk about this decision that you dissented from.
Well, thank you, first of all, for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak with you all. Yesterday was the culmination of really months of deliberation by a study committee. The study committee consisted of 5 of us on the Historical Commission. And we were charged with coming to a decision to recommend to the full Historical Commission what to do about the Confederate monuments, and the ask by Governor Roy Cooper to suggest that they be removed and put into the battlefield. As I was deliberating, we had hearings, we heard from some parts of the public, but the decisions really came down to whether or not we had standing to be able to advise that these monuments be removed. I call them memorials because, in fact, they really are memorials that I believe are better served being in a cemetery, that of the way that they were erected. You know, these are huge footprints on our state capitol grounds. One of the monuments is 75, a memorial, is 75 feet in height. That is a huge statement to make about the Confederacy. Vote yesterday reflected 3 resolutions, 3 ways in which we were addressing the issue. I voted consistent with the statement that I made, which is to remove those 3 memorials and to place them in more appropriate venues. Yes, well, if I'm voting to say no, that they should be removed, and my consistency in my vote was that not only is it hard to rehabilitate those statues and to put the kind of signage around that should be there, that I also felt that I had to be consistent again with what I was voting and to say no to that particular resolution. It doesn't mean that I'm against bringing to the Capitol grounds statues or monuments that depict the ways in which African Americans and Native Americans have contributed to North Carolina. If we voted to remove them, it would be an opportunity for us to rethink citizenship, because those monuments also were about abrogating the citizenship of African Americans and, by extension, other non-whites. So this isn't just about black and white. This is about how is it we're going to understand ourselves as full citizens of our state and of this country.
That in Germany, you don't see monuments to Hitler, and then people say that's because we can't remember even the evil that he did. They say, no, they don't belong as memorials. Confederate statue of Robert E. Lee, even his great-grandson said, no, he should be taken down.
This is not settled business, where there is a lot of rife and turmoil, and we're not settled as a people. We are being led in directions that, to me, lead us toward fascism. And that is another reason that I stood the way that I did. That, as paraphrasing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Why We Can't Wait, unjust laws require action. They require us to address what is the injustice and immorality of laws. Just because something is technically legal doesn't mean that it's not immoral.
And she said it right by the words of Martin Luther King. All injustice should be met with action. And the type of action that should be done, if you saw the Democracy Now! Report on that, how far spread these monuments are throughout the nation, they need to be gone. They need to be put into the graveyards that they are. To have a 75-foot, yeah, it does, statue that does say something. And it says a lot of hate is what it says. It says a lot of keep your foot down on the man, police, go ahead and get him if you can't. That isn't what it needs to be saying to the people that are walking around and live around it and gotta learn how to get along. That ain't how to get along. And we know that a lot of these were put up right after the turn of the century and after, and we need to fight toward this. I'm going to have some links below, and you check those out, get involved, and don't let these signs of oppression be something that you want to hold your head down when you walk by. Hold your head up and say one day that thing is going to be gone. Stand free. Stand proud. And if you agree, contact me at FeministNewsN@gmail.com. Don't forget to like my Facebook page, Feminist News Network, and my Feminist News Network YouTube channel. Subscribe, ring the bell, and get those exclusive videos that only subscribers do. Alright, so thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you. Now, we're growing by the numbers. We're growing strong. Now, you know they're trying to suppress some of my videos, but I'm not going there because we need to build numbers. We need to let people know. We do not need to go there. We just need to keep you informed. Thanks for watching. Peace.